I know somebody has a good question. Come on. Yeah, back there.
I wanted to ask how you managed, well, how you went about writing immigrant characters, because if you do too much of you have to be too fleshy, a bit too gimmicky, sort of. So how do you balance writing?
I think
keep that authenticity and making believable characters?
it's a great question, the question of authenticity. How do you keep things authentic? I teach a course at Columbia called Immigrants a Go-Go, where I deal with exactly this issue. Joe Lahiri, Chang Lee, Juna Diaz, the whole crew. And Immigrants a Go-Go focuses on that very question. So, as a big fat immigrant writer, I'm trying to represent Russia, but who am I representing it to? Am I representing it to Americans, or am I trying to stay authentic to the Russian homies? That's the question. Where do you, and whatever you do, you always mess up. You can never please either constituency. The Americans will say, well, this is too much Russian crap. It doesn't really mean anything to me. It's not universal enough. And the Russians will say, well, he's betraying us by writing all this nonsense about us. When I go to Russia, some of the reviews in the main newspapers have been, balding traitor betrays motherland. That's a really positive review. And the feeling is, well, it's okay to make fun of us if you stay in Moscow, but if you live in New York, you can't do this to us. What do we ever do to you, you bastard? And I understand that complaint. So the modern immigrant author also serves as a kind of weird bridge between his or her culture and the American culture. Because remember, in America, we don't really publish translated books other than Murakami. Who the hell wants to read a goddamn foreigner, right? So books by immigrants fill in that void. We only do translate 2% of our books, whereas countries like France and Germany translate 40, 50, 60%. So as immigrants, we have a double, as always in this country, we have two duties to perform. One is to keep our own culture alive, and the other is to placate the American thirst for interesting narrative, the kind of narrative that goes slightly outside of Scarsdale, Westchester.
Yeah, sort of like that last thing you said. I feel like, and you might disagree with this, that in some ways, the engine that you write with is anger, and I was wondering if it's hard to stay angry.
It's hard to stay angry, good things keep happening to me, and I wish they wouldn't. There's a lovely dog who licks me and hugs me and follows me around and eats turkey treats. I live decently, my diet is good, I'm on Lipitor. My problems with women aren't that bad anymore, once I've discovered my sensuality. I'm growing taller, weirdly enough.
And thinner.
And thinner. I'm up to 5'5.5". I mean, what next? So, how do you keep the anger going? Well, you delve into the past. The past is a wonderful nuclear reactor of anger. And in going through this memoir, one of the things I have to do is go back to Russia with my parents. They haven't been back in 31 years. And I know they're angry about Russia. I know that's a country that's left them terribly unhappy. Not just the anti-Semitism, but just growing up in a society where everything sucks. And I wanted to channel some of that suckiness and to see how, why am I less smiley than I should be, Whenever I went, the first few times I went back to Russia, I tried smiling and people just beat me up. So now I know not to do that. But what's the trick? How do we break out of our Russianness and ascend into a more happier way of living? I don't think it's possible. I think who we are is who we are, and we'll always carry that with us. I mean, I've had 11 years of psychoanalysis, Jesus Christ, 4 times a week, with a couple of shock treatments. It's still the same old Gary, So you can't really change. That's an optimistic thought, yeah.
Okay, sorry to ask a question, but this is making me think of another question.
Sure.
You talk in the novel about the parent characters and how they fled Russia, whom they hated, and developed this sort of hero worship of America as a nation state, and then that nation state fails them utterly again.
Yeah.
Is that how your parents or other immigrants that you're talking to in your research,
well,
that they feel about America now?
I won't bring my parents into this, but let's just say that many Russian parents and some of their offspring are not too happy with the Obama. They see him as a socialist, somebody who continues the socialist ways of Russia, and trying to explain to them that that people who earn over $250,000 are paying less taxes than ever before, and that's not exactly socialism. It's a tough sell, And is there an undercurrent of racism there? There could be. There could be. Russia was a deeply xenophobic and racist society. I've never heard a good thing said about another race growing up or at any part of my life in Russian. It's a very complex, I don't want to, in a couple of words, I don't want to dismiss it, but it is a very conservative voting bloc, always has been. And I think it takes several generations, not just Russians, other countries that have come from post-communist countries, Cubans, for example, also form a fairly reliable Republican voting bloc. So, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing.
That just brings up the fact that 78% of American Jews voted for Obama. So does that mean that the current Russian immigrants are way, way more conservative than the average American Jew?
You got it.
Thank you.
That's right. That's the other 22%. Yeah. I vote in several states, so I really helped engineer Obama's victories in North Carolina, Georgia, somewhere else. So I'm working overtime. That's what Russians do. We vote a lot. Because we're denied the power to vote for so long. Okay. Any last thoughts? Yes, sir?
Complete absurd question, but speaking of religion, so which way is the true way for Christ's true footrest?
Oh, wow, that's from Absurdistan. Which way is Christ's true footrest? Okay, here's something. I don't have an answer to that, and I'll tell you why I don't have the answer to this. People ask me very intelligent questions like that one about the books. The problem is, since Absurdistan, I haven't really written these books. They are outsourced to India, where a gentleman named Rajiv from Hyderabad actually writes them, and I pay him. And I asked him for a love story that was, kind of sad and true, and he said, all right. And I said, can you make it super? And he was like, well, that'll cost another 8,000 rupees, but we can do that. And so we came up with Super Sad True Love Story. But I don't write it. And so all the stuff you're talking about, I can give you his email and he can answer that. But I honestly have no idea what the hell goes on in these books, except for the part I read. I hope that's okay. I hope you don't think less of me just because I outsource my literature. But that's how almost every author. You think other authors aren't doing it? You think Leatham and Franzen and Dantikan and all these people are doing it? Everyone's doing it. Nobody writes. Because we're a wealthy nation and we should outsource everything. Rick Moody's crazy. He writes his own books. I've seen him do it. I've seen him type, and I'm like, and they're like 700 pages long. I'm like, dude, what's up? I mean, I can get you a nice deal in Hyderabad. And he's like,
I'm going to tell Rick this in an email tonight.
okay. So he's the last one that still writes. Well, thank you so much on that crazy note. Let us conclude, and I will sign anything you have, books by other authors. Felix will sign paw print things, please. Thank you so much. Thank you, Strand.